And now joining Steve on stage for a conversation about data-driven cures is the CEO and founder of NanoVision, Steve Papermaster. Please give him a warm welcome.
Get out your Twitter. This is going to be tweetable. Steve, so I met this guy a few weeks ago, and I actually had seen him in action in Davos, Switzerland in January, but had known his reputation of being a science advisor to President Bush. And this was still a time when science advisors were looked at as, hallowed, good people, right? So, I've been worried myself. Many people have seen my writing. I'm worried about, the state of science, what we're doing with science, respect for science, and these systems we're in. And Steve Papermaster, just to put on the record, is not only the CEO of NanoVision and founder, a real entrepreneur on a number of fronts, but was also one of the people who was really one of the fathers of the Human Genome Project. So, Steve, I want to have you take us down the path. You said this morning at a forum we had that we have to cure curing, and that a lot of our assumptions that built in how we're looking at the future of healthcare are pretty rotten to the core. Am I misstating that?
No, Steve. Thanks a lot. We do have to cure curing. And to cure it, I think we have to call out the truth in a room, which is that healthcare is broken. Even the way that we develop and deliver cures is broken. It's nobody's fault. It's just broken relative to where we should expect it to be at this stage in 2019. And I think that's the core, which is that healthcare and health, of all things in our life, health is the most important thing in our life, and we have made, despite tremendous advancements, we've made the least progress in fundamentally changing how we relate to our health on a day-to-day basis.
So what is the pathway to fixing that? You're based in Austin. You're no longer of the DC world and community. What are you doing with Nano to change the game?
We're building a platform to cure curing. And the platform is based on all the components that it takes to understand everybody's individual health on an individual basis, so personal health, and then connecting personal health up in total to aggregate health, which you can think of as sort of the internet of cures and the internet of curing. And the reason that's important is that solving and creating breakthroughs on anything in our lives takes connectivity and it takes information. And if you look at every major platform breakthrough in every facet of our life that has completely changed how we work, live, and play in the last 10 to 20 years, you'll find that you had the connectivity and you had the information to change the game. So if you look at Facebook and creating the social profile and other things like that, you went from doing something that was virtually inconceivable to very rapidly becoming something that was virtually indispensable. You look at transportation and you say, we went from telling people never get in a car with a stranger ever to tell them make sure you get in a car with a stranger, pay them, and that's how you're going to get around. You went from the inconceivable to the indispensable. And you can play that out through Netflix and other similar things to go from taking physical copies of entertainment content to live streaming based on your preferences, practically creating your own show and entertainment. In health, this has not happened. Nothing even close to it. Again, not necessarily anyone's fault, but it doesn't work.
So paint a little picture. So if I'm getting it right, it's sort of NanoVision and what you're trying to create is a platform that's a bit Facebook, a bit 23andMe, and a bit Uber. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, so at least I'm on the right track. So what is that? I mean, I think one of the things we've been struggling with today, and that I find so important to this, is figuring out how you empower people and patients where they are, enhance their literacy, enhance them as stakeholders, enhance their power. So just paint us a picture as best you can and tell the audience what this is going to look like.
What it would look like is you'll have billions of people on a platform or a few platforms that are driven through marketplace adoption, that people will largely self-adopt, that they will create and curate and maintain their own health profile. It's theirs. It's personal, it's private, and it's portable, but it's yours. You can then attach it to, share it with, connect with anyone else that you want based on your own preferences and opting in. So it's in your hands and it's in your control. The power of connection is tremendous, but it should be your choice. Secondly, is it should touch every single determinant factor of your health in your life, from societal determinant factors to environmental determinant factors to direct health and chronic condition and clinical, but everything. And you can't ignore, you can't play economist and assume away all these other things. Your environment alone impacts 20 to 40% of your health, and yet there's literally no way to test and manage that, even in largely drug development, let alone measuring in your life. What are you breathing? What are you exposed to? Who's sitting 10 rows up from you in a flight that's sending a virus your way, and you're completely oblivious other than worried about it? All these things change when you have a platform.
So worried about that myself. What's your name? I want to go. Yeah, I'm going to use you as a pawn in my game here. Zani? Jeanne. So Jeanne, I want to ask, if Jeanne was to be a Nano member, and because I've got a lot more information you guys do, the NanoSense chip. So how is Jeanne going to interact with the Nano? What does a NanoSense chip do for Jeanne?
That's more a direction, Steve, of a technology that will basically sequence and attach to the information that impacts our individual and collective health to be able to tell us what we need to know. What are we breathing? What's in our environment? What's in our individual microbiome, our collective microbiomes, and our collective environment? So this is technology that we have developed.
So is she attached to that somehow?
Everybody will have the opportunity to both personally and collectively obtain that information, right? Just by virtue of deciding whether they're going to use some of this technology or not. Think of it as ways for germs.
Right.
Think of it as ways for pollutants.
Ways like the driving ways.
Like the driving ways. So there's a lot of things. So is there a traffic stop set up? Is there a traffic jam somewhere? Is there a severe thunderstorm or tornado? You want to know about everything as it pertains to yourself and as it pertains to anybody else, right? This is part of our everyday lives now and everything else, again, but our health. Why? Because we haven't developed and brought that level of innovation on a broad-based adoption platform in a marketplace, and that's what it takes. It takes platform to drive paradigm shift. In healthcare, that means a paradigm shift. It means changing everything of the way we think of care and curing, everything. And it has to match or exceed the level that we are used to dealing with in every other facet of our life, or we will have failed in the opportunity. And that is tragic. So, and we need, that will translate into changing everything about clinical trials, drug development, drug discovery, pricing. We don't have to talk about whether we have an arbitration to determine or transparent pricing of free internet access. You just get on and use it. Most aspects of cures and care we should have available to us, whether it's free or at fairly low cost, in very rapid development and delivery. So instead of 10 to 20 years to develop a drug with a 90 to 99% failure rate that will serve fewer than 1 million people and cost over $500,000, we should have things flowing on a fairly constant basis with a 90+% success rate that can be self-adopted or adopted with medical care as appropriate and costs fairly little individually, and collectively the economics are fabulous.
Mark Cuban, many of you know Mark Cuban from Shark Tank, and Arun Kant, who is an investor. He was an investor in Alibaba and SpaceX and Tesla, and a lot of other players out there have both, as I know, they put about $200 million of investment into your company. What are they salivating over?
Well, from two things.
Yeah.
One is we have partners and investors such as Mark and Arun Kant, as you mentioned, who are, number one, socially aware and conscious. Who doesn't want to change the world? You talk about impacting investing today. What greater impact can you have than dramatically changing the ability to cure and care?
Right.
So savvy investors and savvy partners are very devoted to that for every good reason. Number two, good old economics. Name me one market bigger faster growing, with more global implications than the market for health. There is none. And so from a standpoint of creating an opportunity to an ecosystem to have a winning platform or winning platforms in the marketplace, there's none better.
And just finally, before I go to the audience, we've had hospital folks up here, pharmaceutical firms, patient advocates, just every insurance plans. What do you need from them for what you're doing? What do you need as far as the ecosystem to shift to make way for what you're going to do? Or are you going to compete with all of them?
Well, on one hand, we need nothing other than probably awareness, and that's not a negative. It's just that that the path to driving strong adoption of a winning platform in the marketplace is paved through the path of least resistance and least levels of permission. So this is not permission-based. We're going to do this. We certainly encourage others to do this because this is something that has to be done successfully in a marketplace and the world. And I think this is one of those moments where people are generally, whether they say it or not, they're fed up. This distrust of science and distrust of medicine and distrust of medical and health isn't because I think the collective we views these as all bad people. It's just there's clearly that sense of this is just not working. It's not, because it isn't. And when everyone can, again, look at themselves and say, in every other facet of my life, everything has changed except my health or our health or curing. So that's why we have this societal issue that is global, not just in the U.S. Now, what do we need? We just need people to think this is a great idea and be part of it or cooperate in whatever way makes sense, and at a minimum, take this vision of the future and pull it forward. Expect of yourself and anybody that you're with and any institution you're part of and say, if this doesn't happen in 10 years, we have totally made a mistake. Don't let it be acceptable. In 10 years, everything should have changed. In 20 years, everything should have gone from the inconceivable to the indispensable in this phase of your life.
Well, let me make a deal with you. You give Jeanne a test membership in Nano and let her do it for a year, and then we're going to put you on stage in a year and tell me how is that a deal?
That's a deal.
Okay, there we go. I just made that up. We'll see if he delivers.
You are now in charge of business development.
Let me open it up for any questions or comments for Steve. There's got to be one in there. Yes, right here. And tell us your name again. I heard it earlier, but again.
Stacy Bridges with
Hi,
Veterans
Stacey.
Vision.
Yes.
Hi, I always have a question. What are you going to do to build the trust back up? You're right. We're always trying to rush to cure the cure, but the cure is worse than the actual disease or the ailment, especially with all the side effects associated with the drugs, just to mention on TV. So what can you do to make the average American trust their doctor that they will do the right thing for them?
Great question.
Great question. I think trust in what I'm proposing and what we're building starts with yourself. You'll trust yourself. You'll trust yourself that you're thinking of your own best interests and those who you love and care for. So if you feel in control of that, and then you're deciding who you're connecting up with, who are those physicians, in what case, you have enough control over your own destiny, if you will. It may not be perfect in terms of what the ability to change your outcomes are, but if you have control of that destiny and you feel like it's rapidly increasing in your favor in the collective advancement here, it will change the game in dealing with physicians, with insurance providers, with employers, with government programs, because it's on your terms. And I think as that happens, that trust will grow. Number two is, I think this is a general, we have rightfully tremendous concerns about security, about privacy, about integrity in our lives and all the data of our lives. And yet, we can't privacy ourselves to death. We have to understand that in order to change this paradigm shift, we're going to have to push the envelope where the level of information, even about the air we breathe, who we're surrounding ourselves with, what's happening in our environment, our microbiomes, about what's happening with diet and societal impact, is just information that's going to become vastly more transparent. And transparency is painful at times, but it's good, and it leads to trust. So, great question. Trust is paramount. It's earned, and it has to be backed up by the behavior of both platforms and behavior in using the platforms.
Just to finish, can I ask you one last question, Steve? And outside of Nano, perhaps, or maybe the platform will be good for it. We have some folks here that I really respect who work on rare diseases. Who work on the tough stuff that isn't one size fits all. There aren't economies of scale that are easy, and the cost can be high, research can be high. Is there something in the elixir, if you will, of genetics research and coming up with larger human trials, if you will, that cross countries, that can change the cost equation across the board, not just for the things that hit broad populations, but I'm thinking of our folks in the rare disease. Can these things be hit in a more systematic way over time?
Yes, they can. They can, Steve. If I was running for office in this election season, I might propose a Gene New Deal. And a Gene New Deal would be focused on the benefits of including and sharing on an opt-in basis the kind of broad information you can get from not only the genomics, but the impact on the DNA, the gene expression of everything else that we're exposed to. And by bringing online into a platform people who can then opt in and share or have their profiles link up based on genetic conditions, even if you didn't even know it, and say, hey, you can opt into this group that contains only 4,700 members, but you're the only 4,700 members in the U.S. or perhaps in the world that have the following traits. You now have a majority of those who could benefit, and that information is so valuable. So you begin to tailor personalized medicine on an individual collective basis, on a real-time basis, where real life in real time, from your DNA to your gene expression to all the things that impact your health, are all known. And once you do that, you can cost-effectively develop and deliver as close to a cure and proper care as you can get. And this is letting 1,000 flowers bloom. It's really letting, over time, 8+ billion flowers bloom, because that's the population of the Earth. And in fact, it's more than that, because life goes down to code which is common at a certain scientific level. We don't want to be afraid of that. So you want to solve for food, you want to solve for water, you want to solve for most environmental issues, solve this, because when you solve the equation for basic cellular and genomic life in a positive way, it will enable the solution to most of the major problems that we deal with today.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Papermaster, Chairman and CEO of Nanovision, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.